Mexicans are not our friends. Believe me, we're bringing drugs, we're bringing crime, we're rapists. This was said by past President Donald J. Trump.
Hola, soy Sylvia Chen.
Hola, soy Joel Torres.
Hola, soy Catherine Vélez.
Hola, soy Cristian.
Hola, soy Carolina Bibol. How has Hispanic and Latino culture altered the concept of equality in Hispanic populated states in the last 20 years? Hispanic and Latino culture has actually led to an altered concept of equality, resulting in discrimination within healthcare, education, and political systems.
Differences in Hispanic culture has caused inequality in healthcare systems for those of Hispanic origin in the United States. As you may see in this data, American communities were surveyed. Results show percentage rates within factors that are indeed health disparities. The health disparities above are recurring main reasons why Hispanics don't get the full optimal healthcare treatment in America today. Health disparities are avoidable circumstances that relate to the individuals who are in care for injuries or diseases, which are based on social factors such as their personal income, ethnicity, lack of education, and lack of access to care. Can this mean that Hispanic/Latinos communities are at fault for their own fault in the healthcare systems? It is commonly found in Latinos and/slash Hispanic communities that they often have a highly acquired to not having health insurance. Certain health disparities like lack of transportation, lack of affordable and available health providers are in acquaintance with the reason why they don't often acquire health insurance. Hispanic and Latino communities are at fault for their own life cycles.
People of Hispanic descent have different levels of economic advantages than other ethnicities, prohibiting them from academic advancements. In this graph shown by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the typical white family had over 7 times the wealth of the typical Hispanic family as of 2016. In the timeline of 1989 to 2016, the 50th percentile wealth of Hispanic families, shown in the green line, is significantly lower than the 50th percentile wealth of white families, shown in the blue line. This wealth gap conveys the lacking economic advantages from low-wage jobs. With a much lower income, Hispanic families may not be able to afford funds to help support their children with their educational studies. Now, in this infographic from the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, the Latino bachelor's degree attainment rate is only 20%. It is lower than the blacks, the whites, and the Asians. Referring back to my previous graph, there's a direct correlation between low income affecting education, since students have fewer resources and possibly cannot access basic needs to help them become more successful.
Look at me. Aim it at that, not the screen. You're too far away. Click in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Click on the, Sylvia, click on the lower left-hand corner of the screen. No, the screen. The screen. There you go.
This quote from J. Leal R. Howard's emphasizes how minority students have been heavily discriminated against. This is simply another example of how Hispanic and Latino communities and people have had an altered sense of equality within education.
People of Hispanic descent experience systematic inequality towards the United States. National Council of La Raza organization, an organization which advocates for Hispanic youth, says, Young people who drop out of high school, many of whom experience suspensions or expulsions, are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated as those who graduate. Under zero tolerance policies, Hispanics are 3 times more likely to be suspended, expelled, or face off trial compared to white youths who commit the same infractions. This is a reflection on the systematic inequality that Hispanics face. These no tolerance policies, which only seem to be tolerant toward white people, are pushing our Hispanic/Latino children into prison. As you can see, Hispanics are suffering discrimination in the workplace, with the shares of workers in professional occupations being lower than Asians, whites, and blacks races. With the shares of workers in professional occupations being lower than Asians, whites, and black races, consequences cited from the previous graphs being applied, these numbers would be lower than they already are. Children being pushed into prison, the previous graph, shows how Hispanic youth is being pushed into prison daily. This graph shows already low managerial employment roles as more Hispanic youths keep facing the prison pipeline. The percentage will only fade. This takes place due to discrimination Hispanic youths face in the daily.
In 2020, everybody's lives stopped. As you may recall, COVID struck. But how did that affect minorities living inside the U.S.? This is where systemic racism steps in. Systemic racism is when a certain organization or policy may act slightly indifferent towards certain minority groups. In this case, the minority group we're studying are Latinos, which make up for 18.5% of the U.S. population, and yet they also make up for 29.5% of COVID-19 cases. Not only that, but when it comes to pregnant women who are infected with COVID, 44% of these women are Latinas. But if you're still not convinced that Latinos are at a higher risk of contracting COVID-19, Latinos right now are being hospitalized at a rate 4.6 times faster than your average white individual. Now this graph is pretty self-explanatory. However, what you're looking at is a bar graph showing the different groups of people affected by racial discrimination when trying to participate in the political process in 2017. As you can see, the least affected group was the group identifying as white with an incredibly low number of 4%. The most affected, however, was the African American group with a 19%, followed by the Latino group with a 15%, and yet it is still almost 4 times higher than those in the white group. This type of discrimination can affect votes or can cause minority groups to act negatively in the political process, followed then by Native Americans with a 10% and then Asians with a 7%. Individuals of color show much higher discrimination rates than those of white descent.
People of Hispanic descent have had their concept of equality significantly altered over the last 20 years. But data and statistics clearly show that the concept of equality has been altered. And it has not been altered neither in a linear way, neither a positive way. People of Hispanic and Latino descent have experienced great discrimination within the healthcare system by lack of care and being denied care. Not to mention that Hispanic and Latino youth are currently being pushed into prison and have a lack of funds to push for expensive school. This all shows an example of yet again, it brings up the immense wealth gap, prohibited academic achievements, and healthcare inequality. We have natural rights as United States citizens. We have a right of liberty, health, and pursuit of happiness. People of Hispanic and Latino descent cannot practice their right to healthcare, cannot practice their right to liberty and happiness if they're constantly being discriminated against. They cannot practice the right to health if a current healthcare system is currently discriminated against them, and not to mention right now Latino and Hispanic youth are having the right to life taken away by the school to jail prison pipeline and the lack of funds for their schooling. This all brings us to show that the implications of this are just going to continue, and people of Hispanic and Latino descent are going to keep being discriminated against. This can only mean one thing for our country, discrimination. These are our sources, and thank you for your time.
Again, step forward, step together. We started here last time, so we're gonna start over here this time, okay? So, what's a way in which, sorry, I lost my point. What's a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about the research you conducted?
So on the resolutions that we provided, my research didn't necessarily actually have a resolution, it had a solution, and in which the solution didn't acquire the same perspective that I did use in my research.
Okay. We'll go up, Chris. Let's see. Describe an argument from one of your peers' research that makes you think differently about your team's solution, or I guess yours is conclusion, the way you guys did it.
So, an argument that made me think differently about our solution would be Sylvia's, because Sylvia's made me rethink our whole solution so we could fit in and we could see more appropriations that could be fit towards her argument.
All right, thank you. Bivol. Let's see, reflecting on all the work that everyone in your colleague had done, which one had the greatest impact on your overall understanding of the problem that your group identified?
So right now, Joe Lisa's research is the one that made me rethink our whole problem, because I never realized how healthcare is affecting Hispanic and Latino lives, and although all of our research is significantly, but I would argue that Joe Lisa's the one that made me open up my perspective the most.
All right, thank you. Sylvia, if you had another team member, so you had 6, what perspective or limitation could they have reached that would have made a useful contribution to your project?
I think that if we had another team member that came in with a social or cultural perspective, it would have helped our argument that Hispanic and Latinos face inequality become better.
Okay, and last one. What's an example of one of your peers' research that you decided not to use in your presentation, and then why?
One social aspect that we didn't choose was the background of Hispanics and Latinos, because it didn't really contribute that much to the